Check. All right, we are looking good.
I'm gonna get interviewed.
We are.
They're interviewing you?
Not me. Not me. I don't have to say much.
No, never. Take care there. So we may begin. Okay.
Tell us your name, and it is the 12th of February.
Okay. My name is Angelo Stripto. I've lived in Pawleys Island for about 5-6 years now. We moved down here in 2017. And I'm retired. Grew up and lived in Pennsylvania most of my life, and then I was born and raised in New Jersey.
And I believe you have a background in computer science.
I was a programmer at Chubb Insurance Company for about 30 years. I worked as a coder, and then I was a business analyst for the last couple years of my career.
And you're Italian?
Definitely.
In
99% Southern Italian.
it is Southern Italian.
Yeah. My mother's parents were both from Sicily. My father's parents, there's a story there. My father's mother was from a somewhat wealthy family, and my grandfather was an orphan. She fell in love with him and married him, and because of this, her father disowned her, and her family more or less disowned her. And when they came to the United States, they immigrated to the United States. She still kept in touch with her sisters, and her sisters, I guess, gave the letters to her mother. But if you go back to the town where she was born, you look in church records, because that's who kept the records back then, you will find no evidence if she ever existed.
They removed her from the church.
They removed her from the father was powerful enough that he could, that was a great sin to buck your father's will, because this man was beneath her.
Right.
He was an orphan.
Well, we are familiar with such prejudices in this part of the world.
Right.
In fact, it seems appropriate that with that background, you would be in a church that has tried hard to open its doors
Right.
to those who are excluded other
Yeah,
places.
and I love the history of this place. Its beginnings, its continuing history. I remember when I was parking cars for the convention they had here a number of years ago, and I parked the car, and a woman got out of the car, and she goes, "Is Baskerville around here?" And I said, "This is Baskerville." She goes, "I came here as a child."
Oh my.
And I go, "Yeah." She goes, "There was a pool here." I go, "Yeah, that was filled in." I said, "But where you're standing is the original Baskerville camp." I said, "All this area." I said, "You see Miss Ruby's school?" She goes, "The chap I passed." I said, "That's the original church." I said, "That was here. It's now by the highway." I said, "We built this new building a number of years ago." And she goes, "It's amazing." She was taken back just by, she had been here as a child, but she never realized, it was still here, and it still existed as
We're still, people keep rediscovering us that way.
If you read back, in the history every Sunday, they put in the bulletin, and if you just go and look at that tapestry in the vestibule there, you'll see the whole history of the church.
It is all there.
Right.
Yeah. One day, Father Will was showing that tapestry to an attorney who was visiting, and he said, "Well, there's my grandfather," and he's the grandson of Ben Martin, who was he was never ordained, but was running things here before, brought by Baskerville, but before the Rev, as Ruby came.
Right.
Well, did you grow up Catholic?
Yeah, I went to Catholic grade school, first grade through eighth, and then I went to public high school. I went to a Catholic college, Seton Hall, but I guess, and my daughter is baptized. She got her holy use confirmed in a Catholic church, and I was a Catholic up to about, I don't know, mid 80s, 90s. And I left the church, a lot of reasons. I didn't see eye to eye with a lot of the people and their beliefs, and plus they had a lot of problems in the Allentown diocese with priests and their indiscretion. So
Abusing
yeah, so
youth.
yeah, so a couple, not as widespread as some places, and it was just an epidemic of things that I disagreed with. I disagreed with a lot of their political positions and their non-acceptance, country club attitude as opposed to accepting everybody. So I joined a small church, well, not a small church, but a Episcopal church in Easton, Pennsylvania, Trinity, and I got close with the rector there, and I got guided back to a place where I could reconcile my own beliefs, my political and moral beliefs with my religious beliefs.
Who was that priest?
Andrew Gurns.
Gurns?
He's retired now, lives in Florida.
Well,
I still communicate with him and his wife through Facebook and things. He was a good guy. And he was exactly my age, so that helped in the beginning. Yeah, and it was funny. I told him I was moving down to South Carolina, and he says, well, be careful down there. He goes, excuse the language, you're batshit crazy down there. He goes, you got two wings of the Episcopal Church. He goes, just be sure to pick the right one.
yes.
So I talked to my realtor when I came down here, and she said, well, she goes, you have no shortage of churches down here. She goes, but the one knowing you and the one that I think you'll like, I would try Holy Cross. So after a couple months getting settled in, I came here and found a home. I love the people here. I love the clergy. I love to get involved with things, and by doing that, I got close to a lot of people, met a lot of people like you and Mark, who are, part of an extended family.
Well, you've been active with us.
Yeah.
You began lay reading almost at once, didn't you?
Yeah, well, Father, it was funny because Father Will, he asked me to come on the finance committee at first. And I did that, and there was another opportunity coming up to do something with the diocese that Deb Harris had approached me with. And he said, I don't want you doing that. I have other plans for you.
Oh.
So I said, okay, fine. He goes, I want to keep you close to home. And then the following year, he offered me to take John Sands' place as a treasurer. And I worked with numbers my whole life, and I was an analyst, so I kind of add and subtract pretty well and use spreadsheets pretty well and understand, finances. And in all truth, with this place, the way we are run, and Susie, who is remarkable, I can't thank her enough. She does most of the work as a bookkeeper. She's tremendously talented. She gives me all the information I need, and it's a pleasure really to do the work. It's not all that difficult. I mean, I would go to a finance committee meeting, we discuss basically, and a lot of times Susie lays out, what's good and bad with the month. We look at those numbers, we examine them, and then we plan for what we want to spend the money on and what we need to do here. I was just looking at the steeple. We need to get that repaired. And the problem isn't not the money, but finding somebody to do it. I think Barb has cornered a couple people to do that work. We have to paint this place, the outside. Repair the windows. A lot of windows, the seals are broken and stuff. So we got to get that done. So there's a lot of maintenance on this place. And plus, we have to find a new home. We have to find a new parish office. We have to build one. The parish house Miss Ruby's schoolhouse and home is put it mildly, decrepit. There's a lot of problems with that building, and it needs to be renovated and restored carefully.
Mhm.
And it's not really healthy to work in anymore.
It's
So
tough on
it's-
people's knees.
right, you have everything on the second floor. If you go up the grading, some people are afraid of the grading.
Mhm.
The stairs inside are very steep and narrow. So it's a wonderful old building, but at the same time, it has its problems and issues.
Before I'm gone, I hope that we will get it on the historical register.
Well, that's one thing I started to look into. I have to talk with John and a couple other people. Some people apparently have started it because I was reading through some documentation yesterday. It's a 60 or 70 page book. You have to go through to either figure out if you qualify, first of all, which I don't think we'll have any problems. And I would also like to get it on the state registry.
Mhm.
And also there's a Black History registry
Mhm.
you can get on because we're all part of that with Miss Ruby and the work that she did. So there's some work to be done.
There is. Well, you can't easily renovate historic things.
Right. Well, what we would do if we get some grants and stuff, you get people who know how to, they're more experienced in renovating. And it has to be done carefully because you want to keep the integrity of the building.
Right.
But there is some work to be done. I mean, if you've ever been in that building, you can look around and see it.
I'm in there
Yeah.
from time to time.
Right. So.
Yeah. When you came, 17,
2017 we moved here.
what was our debt posture? How much do we owe?
Well, in 2012 we were at $1.5 million, 1.46.
Mhm.
So we were probably 1.25 million back then.
Mhm.
When you're dealing with those kind of numbers, it's kind of tough. It was a big strain paying a mortgage, and we're down right now to a little more than $30,000 we have left,
Mhm.
and we will pay that off probably in May. Being that we have to avoid a balloon payment in July,
Mhm.
which we won't. We have the money to do that, but we also need people to understand that if they haven't paid their pledge by then, keep paying that money because we will take that money, put it in the capital reserve funds to help, with the grounds preservation and getting this campus in shape, and any money left over we'll throw into a pot to start to build a new building.
Mhm.
We want to do something where we have offices for everybody, and then eventually maybe put an addition on it to add some classrooms and stuff for Christian formation education. Because that's part of what we stand for, but it's tough. We have a lot of hurdles to overcome. Not getting the building built per se, but dealing with the regulations for water retention, all that stuff. We have, I don't know, want to go on,
No, you didn't.
but we were grandfathered in for the building of the pantry expansion from our previous work that we did for the church and stuff.
Mhm.
So we skirted by with that, but if we build a building, it's going to be a new different. We have to conform to all the newest regulations, rules, and what have you. So that will be some time consuming and some costs involved in there.
When you came, I guess, how many people did there seem to be?
Well, I can't tell you exactly when I came, but I can tell you from the time that Father Will came to now, we've about doubled
Yeah,
our population.
from 300 to 600.
Right, and something like that. And we also have the budget has considerably grown, probably almost doubled also, which is expected.
And then a high percentage of that budget was debt service,
Yes,
and which frustrated Father Will because
right,
money just sort of sucked away.
right. We've lowered that considerably, and by June of this year it will be done. we'll be done with that. And naturally, we'll probably take on some debt for the building of the construction of the new office. But we hope to get contributions from both the congregation and the community to help with the help of the building of that building. So we have no plans to do a capital campaign or anything to support that building, at least at this point. It will probably be, estimate 750 to $1 million to get that done. You know, with the cost of construction, everything, their expenses are rising. So.
Have you noticed the church changing from 17 to today?
It's, from my view, I mean, I see more people, I get to know more people, I see younger families coming in. I think people find this place welcoming and warm. I've never seen a person leave this place without a smile on their face, or, you know, I think they enjoy Father Will. He's very open, he's very loving. He's, you know, he says that, you know, at the end of every service, you know, it's an honor with you, to worship with us today. And I think he makes people feel accepted and, you know, welcome into the parish. I don't know. I found a home here. I mean, I like you know, the people and everybody just make me feel good. I mean, you have to understand, if you grew up where I grew up in the Northeast, they have churches and stuff, but no, it's not down here. Churches, you go on Sunday and that's it. It's more of a community down here. And there's not that community atmosphere that much up north. It's, you go to church on Sundays and that, you know, you did your good deed for the week. And I'm not saying it's bad or it's not religious or that the people are bad, but it's different. In the South, it is much more community oriented, and people talk about their religion, you know, you know,
We do.
and it's, you know.
Which means the disputes become personal.
Right. I mean, it's just a cultural thing. I mean, I don't know how to explain it. I mean, I like living in the Northeast. I enjoy. I grew up with you know, all my relatives, everybody I knew was Italian practically. My father, you know, was a blue collar guy. He was a supervisor in a plant. He worked on cars. He was a good mechanic. That's why I get along with Father Will sometimes. He taught me everything I know about cars. I worked on cars as a kid, rebuilt engines, took them apart, put them back together again. I mean, when I was younger, I was by my father's side, handing wrenches, you know, and I mean, every part of the car I've worked on, from wheel bearings to transmissions to engines mostly, brakes. My father was a diesel mechanic. He worked for Mack Motors for a number of years. And he worked in what they call dyno testing, which means they took an engine and they ran it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, till it broke down. Then when it broke down, they took it apart and see what part failed. So he knew diesel engines inside and out, and engines in general. I had another uncle who was a mechanic. Another uncle who was worked with a construction company. They had their own construction company. They were sons and brothers that all worked together. So I was riding in a steam shovel and a bulldozer when I was little, you know. Had a good childhood. You know, had a pretty stable family, middle class.
And you liked your church as you were growing up?
Yeah, I enjoyed the Catholic Church. I mean, that's where I was raised. I mean, going to Catholic school, it's indoctrinated. I was an altar boy. I was, you know, and you're indoctrinated. But the thing about going to a Catholic church, you're not taught Bible or religion. You're taught Catholic doctrine, more or less. And it's very different. You know, I started to read about the Bible and take courses. I took a lot of online courses. There's a thing called general course. a service. You buy DVDs and CDs, the Great Courses,
Right.
the Learning Company.
Yeah.
And I have tons of those. And that's why I got interested in the Bible. And then in the Episcopal Church, we used to have Bible studies.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the history. I like to know about the people who wrote it, about Paul and about Peter and about Mary Magdalene and about the apostles and the humanness of Jesus as opposed to the, the divinity of him. Not to ignore that, but to know that he was a real person. He smiled, he laughed, he got angry at people. Never sinned, but he was always, he was a human being. And people miss that, a lot of stuff. And he, he suffered great loss and, great friendships he had with people. He was, he was an extraordinarily, human being, and he,
Fully human.
Right.
Fully human. Are you familiar with John Patrick Meyer? He taught at Notre Dame for 4 decades and wrote a book called Marginal Jew. And it's the historical Jesus as he understands it.
Right.
And Notre Dame was relatively liberal, at least about the faculty.
Mm-hmm.
So he was permitted to show a side of Jesus
Mm-hmm.
that's not doctrinal.
Right.
And he sees him as way out on the fringes of Jewish life, living in the sticks.
Right.
And thinks we have tried to make him a little too bourgeois.
Mm-hmm.
And he was poor.
Right. Yeah.
And couldn't read and write, he doesn't think.
Right.
And probably spoke the Greek used and the Aramaic.
Right.
And would not have known Hebrew.
Right.
And would not have known Latin. And would not have known the classic Greek.
Right.
The Koine.
Right.
Anyway, interesting.
Yeah. Well, you look at the apostles, and they weren't the brightest bunch of people. They were mostly illiterate. They couldn't read or write.
Yeah.
It was their belief in Jesus and the Spirit that He gave them that made them what they are, and encouraged them and more or less enabled them to do what they did.
Yeah. In Mark's version, they're almost clowns.
Yeah. Yeah.
And charming, but
Yeah. Well, yeah, because
ineffective.
don't you understand me? How many times did he say that?
Yeah.
It was like trying to get through a wall, but and you're right, you could see that in the gospel where Mark is where, and then Matthew wrote for mostly the Jewish people, because he's always referring back to the prophets, and he tried to always trying to make that connection. And you also have to understand that all this stuff was by word of mouth for thousands of years, until somebody sat down and started to write it down. Not thousands, but hundreds of years later. I mean, the oldest stuff is the epistles of Paul, really.
Right.
And then you have Mark, you have Matthew and Luke, who came about the same time, and much later is John. So you have different viewpoints, and were they written by Mark the Apostle? No, but maybe what they were where Mark taught a certain group of people, and someone in that group had the ability to read and write, and wrote down his words, and then passed them along.
That's how I hoped it was.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I've read a lot about it. I've read a lot of. There's a guy out of North Carolina, Bart Ehrman, who is I guess an agnostic. I don't know what he is, but I don't mind, because he's very good. He doesn't. I don't think he gives a prejudiced view of it. But he's an intelligent guy, and he talks a lot about what they did, and gives the facts, and
I taught a history class immediately after he taught a religion class at Carolina, and he had a huge following.
Right.
And his background is very evangelical, and was raised in a family where he didn't ask questions. And I think that's why he's pretty hostile toward organized religion.
Right.
The very religious kids love him.
Yeah.
They love him, and he's still waiting to be shown, rather than you couldn't call him atheist. You might call him agnostic.
Right.
I think his book about how Jesus became God, I think, is sitting on the shelf over there.
Yeah, well, I've read a lot of him, a lot of the courses I got, great courses he taught. I'm reading a book now from him that he talks about the three most important apostles he says that's Peter, Paul, and Mary Magdalene.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and he talks about, you know, the disputes. You know, a lot of people thought they were one happy family. Peter and Paul were constantly at odds with each other.
Yeah.
You know, and they marginalized Mary Magdalene as a prostitute, and it's probably not she ever was one. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you have to understand that why Jesus and his apostles were going around, it was the women that were supporting them,
Yeah,
both financially and, you know.
that is one thing each of the Gospels makes clear is time and again Jesus goes to women
Right.
for financial and emotional support.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And the guys are fumbling and stumbling.
Right.
And Paul himself, despite himself, relies heavily
Mm-hmm.
on women.
Right, and I that club is a big thing with him. Where I just read about her. She was a wealthy daughter of a wealthy family, and she heard Paul preaching, and she was enthralled by him, and she decided to buck her marriage. Her mother even wanted her to be executed, but she was saved miraculously from fire. Then she went someplace else, and they tried to throw her out of the town. But she stayed with Paul until she was fully baptized and fully immersed with his belief, and was a disciple of his. You know, so there's a lot of history there if you take the time to learn and read. I like that. I love history, and I love learning about that kind of stuff.
You know, you said something that fascinated me about the country club aspect of the Catholic Church in New Jersey.
Well, it's not only in New Jersey. I think that it's an exclusivity. You have to, you know, as long as you. Now, I like Pope Francis. I think he's a breath of fresh air. But you have a lot of people in the Curia that are old and stuck in their ways, so they're very conservative.
Right.
And they don't accept homosexuals.
Right.
They don't accept women having a vital role in the church, and it's like a country club, meaning that if you are in you follow all their rules and regulations, you get into this a club that you should be honored or amazed at, being Roman Catholic, and I found that more because Father Will talks about, how he has friends over at Precious Blood. And in Easton, they used to have what they called Heritage Day. Easton was one of the places that they read the Declaration of Independence at, one of the cities. And they celebrate that day. It's in July. So they used to have a community ecumenical service at the beginning of the festival. And all the churches would participate, but the Catholic Church never would. And it was each church would rotate. You would have the Protestant would lead it one year, Episcopals lead another year, Presbyterians lead, and they would rotate, but they would never want to be included because if they include, it was like they were exclusive to themselves.
Right.
And I never understood that, where this is an ecumenical service, we're bringing people together, why can't you just be there?
And what does Catholic mean?
Yeah.
But, well, it's funny because where I grew up, of course, that's very Protestant, but there were Catholics, and they were almost liberation theologians, and I was my physician was one, and then later, after his wife died, he took orders and basically became worked with the poor.
Right.
And that was my image of Catholics.
Right.
And then I liked the liberation theology, which is all about the poor. And about as far from, and of course Catholics, when I was a kid, couldn't get into the country club. Right. So they were non-country club.
Well, I don't mean they were rich or anything. I meant it was just it was an exclusivity to them, and not that you were lucky to be there, but you followed their rules, and they had a
well, they had dogma.
Yeah, and they I think they let that get in the way of their being a Christian sometimes.
Were you much influenced by John the 23rd and his Vatican II.
He was a little before my time, but I knew of him. I knew of his work and stuff.
When liberals, and I'm guilty,
Mm-hmm.
when liberals talk, we wonder what was he going to do before he died.
Mm-hmm.
Because he set in motion. He studied women ordination. He studied making the mass vernacular.
Mm-hmm.
He studied. He even studied what's marriage mean.
Right.
I don't think he studied homosexuality, but he studied all aspects of forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't mean he was going there.
Right.
These are just committees.
Right.
And we know about church committees. But he, like Jack Kennedy or Martin Luther King Jr., he died before you really knew what in the world he was going to do.
Right.
And then he immediately was placed by Paul, who really was not,
No.
definitely not up to.
Right.
Major
And then,
change.
you've had hardliners after that. I mean, Benedict was a very strict hardliner,
Yeah, he
and he got overwhelmed because I don't think he realized the problems that they had with the clergy and with people covering it up, and I think that overwhelmed him to a point.
I think
where
so. I think he's a good man that got in over his head.
Right.
We, of course, Episcopalians have had abuse
Right.
by priests, and I was on a committee, and we got in deep enough to scare ourselves.
Yeah.
What we saw some of our priests doing.
Yeah.
And then I grew up in a world of Baptists,
Mm-hmm.
and Baptists are now coming to terms with abuse by ministers.
Yeah.
So it's not.
It's not exclusive to the Catholics. It's but
It's out there.
yeah. The thing that always amazed me is that a priest who is not married will counsel married people.
Yes.
And how do you? Well, was the old joke. Don't make the rules if you don't play the game.
Yeah.
Where Father Will and Father Gurns and people I knew was Episcopal priests, they had kids, they had children, they knew what a family was being like, how to raise a family, how to deal with kids and stuff, and how to deal with a spouse, and where a priest is more separated from that.
Mm-hmm.
They usually live alone with other priests. They don't experience what a family is like, and it's a different environment.
Of course, that's what drove Martin Luther crazy.
Right.
And I had a good friend, good academic and economist, Tom Till. He was trained as a Jesuit,
Mm-hmm.
and did good work in economics, good work for the poor, but he met a woman and fell in love, and of course that was it for being a Jesuit.
Right.
And I don't know how many times I would ask him, do you think the Catholics sort of lost a real good servant when they lost you? And he said, no, it wasn't that good. But I knew good people
Mm-hmm.
who left because of this rule, which is not I don't think it's Jesus' rule.
No.
I don't even think
That's a man-made rule.
I don't even think it's a 4th century rule. It's later. But there it is.
Yeah, there were a lot of popes that were pretty corrupt and had more than one wife.
Yes, and plenty of children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I just think that it's there's a lot of things in the Catholic religion, Roman Catholic religion, that need to be examined. But you will never get that. You have the curia, all the cardinals. They are older.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, very, very conservative. I mean, I think they're waiting for Pope Francis to pass away so they can put one of their own in there.
One of them. And the popes tend to go cyclically.
Mm-hmm.
You have a liberal one to be followed by a right winger.
Yeah.
And I'll give them credit when they get too far right, they'll correct.
Yeah. Well, you always have to remember if you're squeezing somebody,
Mm-hmm.
you have to remember who you lose through the cracks.
Mm-hmm.
When you squeeze.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah. Doesn't quite have to do with what we're talking, but earlier you were telling me about your Jerry Garcia tie, so I wish you would do that for her.
Yeah, it's these ties are. Jerry Garcia was a founding member of the Grateful Dead, which a lot of people won't know, but if you're my age, you do know. And this tie is Macy's. My mother worked at Macy's, and Macy's carried these ties, and she would buy me these ties, and they're made from paintings that Jerry Garcia made. They make the tie out, and there are collections. This one is called Moon Mountain. It says limited edition and collection 46. So they're limited editions. They only sell them for a limited amount of time. And I was lucky to have about 5 or 6 of them, and I love them because they're very colorful. I have them in blue. I have a red one. I have a black one. I have a gray one. I have a yellow one. You know, it's just, I always wore these ties. I had to wear a tie for a number of years when I worked at Chubb. And what happened is I just kept on, kept them with me, and I still have them to this day. And I really, when I wear a tie, I'll try to find one that matches. But after a while, we didn't even have to wear ties at Chubb. We went casual, called Chubb Casual, which was khakis, nice shoes, kind of shoes like I have on, and a collared shirt. In the summer, you could wear like a polo shirt, But I always dressed as I am now, sans the tie. That's how I would go to work. Sometimes I put a tie on, and then I worked. They got into working at home, which helped a lot because I had to travel about 35 miles each way back and forth to work. I lived in Pennsylvania. Where I worked was in Warren, New Jersey, which is very close to where I grew up. But anyway, I would go back and forth to work, and it helped when there was bad weather. If it snowed, going to be snow the next day, you would take your laptop home and say, I'll be working from home tomorrow. And as long as you had a phone and your laptop, you were good. So as my career went on, what happened is right before I moved down here, my company got bought out by another company. Really, the company that bought us was smaller than us, but they bought us out and they took our name. So Chubb and Son Chubb now is still a viable company. It's probably one of the biggest property and casualty insurers in the world. So they are still around, but I was put on what they call a transition team, which transfers our technology and the way of our doing things to the new company. So I had a limited run, which I didn't care. I was in my early 60s at that time, so I was fine with it. And I was working 2 days in the office and 3 days at home. And then when we moved down here, I went to fully remote, which was fine. A guy worked for me who lived in Florida for years, so he was good. But with technology, as long as you had a computer, you had communication with the people, and you had a phone, you were good. So I finished my career here, and then I was let go, which I fully expected, didn't mind. I was prepared to retire, so I retired a little earlier than I expected, but it all worked out fine. We came down here, we settled, we had a very nice transition from up in Pennsylvania to here. We sold our house in one day, and that night we bought the house down here. So it was very quick.
Well, I've heard a lot of that lately, but that didn't used to be the case.
Yeah, well,
selling took a while and buying took a while.
Yeah, we sold. We had come down here a number of years, and the house we live in now, we almost had put a bid in earlier, but we wanted to sell our house first. And after you sell a house you've been in 20 years, you got a lot of junk and a lot of stuff to get rid of. Yeah. So cleaning that out and getting all that straightened out, and we were very lucky. The house went on the market Monday afternoon. By Monday night, we had seven bids on it. One was a cash offer for about $15,000 above what we asked. So we accepted that, and that night we were on our local watering hole, Kathy and my wife Kathy and myself, and we called up our realtor down here and we said, is that house still available? And she checked, and it was, and she goes, do you want to make an offer? And I said yes, and we did that. And she called us back about 9:30 and said, the house is yours. So she goes, do you want them to fax all the stuff? And I said, no, we'll come down. So we came down that weekend. We left on a Friday, got down here on a Saturday morning, signed all the papers on Saturday afternoon, and left on a Sunday, and we had a house. And then we moved here in June of that year. We sold the house in April, and June 17th we had to close. So. It worked out. It was one of the things that worked out. Couldn't have worked out any better. The move down here was smooth. We had a great mover. Nothing got broken, lost, or misplaced. So thank God he guided us down here and got us here safe, and we're very happy living down here.
Yes.
We had vacationed here for years.
I wondered that. How did
And
you
we
discover
knew about the place. I mean, my daughter is 32 now. We were coming down here since she was about 5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter is a teacher in Easton, Pennsylvania. She teaches pre-K. It's a program called Pre-K Counts, which takes children who they're poorer children who parents can't afford, to go to a nursery school or something.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a program that they bring them into, and they it's a pre-K class where they're preparing for kindergarten,
Mm-hmm.
which is it's a nursery school but it's a very important part of teaching them how to at least start to form letters, start to be able to maybe write their own name, even hold a pen. It's part teacher, part social work. Because you end up counseling the parents as much as you help the children, because some of the children are ill-behaved and don't really know how to act in a classroom or social environment. So it's not an easy job, but she loves the job. She's very good with the children. She's going for a master's degree. She lives about 2 blocks from where she grew up. Same town, so she enjoys it. She likes it. My son-in-law is a cabinet maker. Who's a very good mechanic also with cars, so I get along with them very well. I'm happy for them. They're doing well, and
Are they Episcopalians now?
she's Catholic, but she loves coming to this church. She's been here a number of times.
Mm-hmm.
My little grandson, August, was baptized here.
Oh.
So Father Will knows him, knows her, and she loves this place. If she lived down here, I know she would be coming here every Sunday, and she'd probably be over there teaching kids 10:30, handling the nursery school and helping out there. But as it is, she's not a big church goer where she is now.
Mm-hmm.
She loves the openness of this place. It's airy, it's white, it's sunlight.
Yeah.
Where it's not a dark stained glass church that she's used to in Catholic and
Not a Gothic rock pile with. That's what we grew up with. Gothic rock piles with stained glass. And
and then that's what I was used to. I mean that the church
somber inside.
right. The church, my Catholic church, was very dark and dark wood and stained glass and huge columns, and you go to the Episcopal church was very much the same.
Mm-hmm.
Not that it was a bad church, but it was just this church is I don't miss stained glass. Stained glass is beautiful, but let the sun shine in, and that's what I appreciate about this place. One of the things.
Yeah, I appreciate it too, although it's new to me. Yeah. Well, looking down the road, what do you hope for us next?
Well, I think this is a very spiritual community. I think we keep building on that. There's questions that we get in what they call a parochial report, and the same thing. What do I see in this faith community for the future? I always tend to look at the business side. What I see in the future is a new office building and a place that's a better environment for our clergy and our staff. Number one. Number two, it's easier for our congregants to maybe go up 2 or 3 stairs to a front porch and go in rather than climbing whole flights of stairs to get to see the priest and the staff. So that's one thing I look forward to, and just further growth and development in this community. The finding of assistant rector to relieve take the load off of Father Will and Reverend Lee, and go on from there. I mean, I think we're on the basic right path as far as faith and ministry. We do so much. I've talked to people who are not congregants of this place, but know of this place. I play pickleball with some people, and I say I'm from this church. Oh, we know that. That's where the food pantry is, or that's where this is. We have a food pantry that's services so many people, and it's grown so much over. We're thanks to people like Renee Ford, we're bringing food to people
Right.
out in the where they need it the most. I mean,
The poorest parts.
right, and what's amazing, you look at this community and you come down 501, because that's how I always came in here, and you see, they're communities, but they're not, they're not, they're poor communities.
Right.
There's no way else saying, in Marion County and stuff, and then as you get closer to Georgetown and stuff, you see it more built up, and this community, this area is fairly, I'm not saying we're the cream of the crop, but it's a well-to-do area, and it's a stark contrast to what surrounds us.
Well,
It's a resort area, which helps it a lot,
when the Rev brought his wife here, and she'd grown up in Charleston, and she felt she'd gone into the deepest, most remote Hickville
Yeah.
that there could be, because
Right.
Polly's, when I was a child, was simple
Right, yeah,
and poor.
right.
And I hear people talking about being privileged, and I think, really?
Mhm.
But I forget what's going on around me.
Yeah. Well, it's coming down here all those years. I've seen this area explode, literally. I mean, places where there were fields, you got a fresh market, you got this, you got that. The places that have sown, and I mean, somebody like Marsh, who's seen this place, grow up. I mean, I've only seen it over the last, 15 years or so, explode. You're talking about, I started to come down here in the early 90s, and then continued from there, and looked around, and I knew I liked this place, and I would like to retire here from that point on. So when we started to look, in this area. We knew this area. I knew this area. My daughter this is like a second home to her. She loves coming down here. She loves the area. She loves, like I said, she loves coming to see Father Will and the church, and enjoys him, and he makes her feel special, and she loves that. Because he goes, if you've been here more than a couple times over, you lost count.
Lost count, yeah.
And he's looked at her a number of times, and she just smiles back at him, and I don't know. I think everybody who comes here is welcomed, and if you let them, they will embrace you. And just be open. My wife's not a big church goer. She's not big on organized religion. She has her own way of praying and stuff, and I don't force anybody. My parents did that, and that's really bucked me to go to church, and I never liked that. You can't force somebody to do something, a religion thing. Religion is very, to me, is very personal, and it's something you have to believe in here. You have to want to come here. I want to come here every Sunday.
It's intimate.
It's that kind of relationship. So I can't tell my wife, no, you have to come, or a daughter, or when my daughter comes down, I said, do you want to go to church with me? Oh yeah, I'll come, Daddy. And my aunt, when we lived in Easton, she used to come. She lives in Connecticut, and we used to go to the Trinity in Easton, and she knew Father Gurns here because he was originally from Connecticut, and she lives in Connecticut, so they started a little rapport. But she loved coming there because, as a divorced Catholic, she was never accepted in the Catholic Church again, but she could go to Episcopal Church, be a service, and actually receive communion. Because she goes, I can receive communion? I said, all Christians are welcome. You're baptized, and she goes, I sure am. I said, well, then you're welcomed. Don't feel bad about anything like that. And she was thrilled at that. So
Yeah. Divorces, when I was a child, no one got divorced.
no, the same thing with me.
We had my sister's godfather got divorced. He was a Grimble from the rice planter Grimbles around here, and it was stunning. of course, he was kicked out of the church,
Right.
and we couldn't understand what he do. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so awful. And then, of course, we gradually watched it change.
Yeah.
Divorce was demonized at one time.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, Jesus, the people that study what he said, he apparently did lay down a pretty hard and fast rule about
Right.
divorce.
Well, today.
And, yeah, we read it today. And the seminar, the 76 theologians that have tried hard, they put that in red.
Right.
They're pretty sure Jesus said that. So it would suit me better if he hadn't said that, but I don't get to tell
Right.
Jesus what he actually said.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times you're not sure what he actually said. There might
Oh,
be a
there's-
lot. There might be a lot of a lot of gray in there sometimes. So.
My little book on that,
Yeah.
probably 80% of the words are in black because we're just not sure Jesus said it.
Mm-hmm.
But the divorce thing, he seemed to lay the law down.
Yeah.
It was
I mean,
emphatic.
I think the most important thing you got to know is be kind to each other, love one another, and I don't mean
Yeah.
accept each other. I mean, you don't have to. You're never gonna like everybody you meet,
Mm-hmm.
but just accept them and with gay people and stuff. It's you don't have to love them. You don't have to think about what they do or you don't care. Accept them for who they are.
Yeah.
That God made everybody. He didn't make them, and if it's genetics or behavior or whatever, accept them. Just accept all people. If they're a different color, if they're a different religion, what does it matter? We all bleed red. We're all human beings. Just accept everybody and be loving and kind to each other.
Well, of course, this.
I mean, I don't understand how people have a hatred and a distrust. And if you look at history, you know why. I mean, it was when if Lincoln had been president and had lived, it'd be so much different because he would have followed through with Reconstruction.
Mm-hmm.
During the period of Reconstruction, black people were beginning to come up. They had towns, they had, and after that, everything was destroyed and what they had built, and we made them subservient. We beat them down again for no reason except because they were the color of their skin.
The land where we are was bought by the Reverend Bruce Williams, who had grown up on the Richmond Hill and had learned how to read and write. His master taught him to read and write. The master was otherwise very cruel.
Oh yeah.
Didn't feed him enough, but he taught him to read and write. And then he was able to get training as a Methodist minister in North Carolina. And he bought a number of acres and arranged for the Brown family
Mm-hmm.
to set up what they call Pray House, which is the origin
Right.
of our church here, going back in the 1870s.
Mm-hmm.
And Williams remained respected by white people in the area right to his death, and served a long time. White people would vote for him.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't matter if they did or not because it was 90% black people, but black people could vote.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, yeah, Reconstruction.
Andrew Johnson just caved in to the people who wanted to keep him down, and that's why
He
destroyed him.
did. Most of them were from South Carolina.
Yeah, and the whole thing is even Grant did a lot. He had a lot of problems in his administration, but he was the one that actually broke up the Ku Klux Klan in their beginnings.
Yeah,
And he had beat them down to a point where they may not survive,
Mm-hmm.
but through years and years they came back to prominence, but he was strong in that. He sent troops through.
He was a civil rights
Right.
president. I wish he'd been more honest.
Yeah.
That's the same way
Well,
I feel about Lyndon Johnson. Yeah. You make a good point that there was nothing natural about the Klan, and it could be defeated
Mm-hmm.
with extraordinary effort, and it took extraordinary effort to bring it back.
Right.
And so it's a political.
Yeah. I mean, I saw pictures, when I was very, very young of them marching, in Washington like they were,
Mm-hmm.
And my father, I think we were all racist to a point,
Mm-hmm.
because, you don't realize it, but you are, and I don't care who you are, I mean, we went to those book studies, you know.
Yeah. You benefit from the white supremacy.
Right. But you know, it's the idea where, I don't know, you just, that's what I find troubled. I find the political situation in this country troubling, and a lot of things people are afraid of, and you know, if you're a woke person,
Yes.
you know, you're evil. You
Yes.
know, woke just means that you realize that, you know, I mean, people, all people, accept science. You don't have to, you know the Earth wasn't born 6,000 years ago. You know, it's you know, millions of years, billions of years old. You know,
Yeah.
things like that. You can accept science and accept God. You know, they're not mutually exclusive.
These were things I thought had been settled
Right.
when I was in college, and
Right.
now they've erupted
Yeah.
again.
And who knows God's sense of time? God's day, it could be 10,000 years, could be a millennium, could be the evolution.
Yeah.
He could have started that little microorganism in water and oxygen. Who knows? That grew up to be, you know, evolved to be a man.
Yeah, that's good.
You know, you don't know God's sense of time.
No, Psalm 90 says a day is 1,000 years.
Right.
And then Peter repeats that.
Yeah.
But you got to think tens of thousands.
Yeah. I mean, I don't understand it, and I can't comprehend it sometimes. Did God just snap his fingers and was that the Big Bang? Who knows? You know?
Yeah. He found chaos and brought order.
Right.
And that's easy to say, but
Yeah.
hard to do.
I mean, that's where faith comes in. We believe in something we can't see, we don't fully understand, but you live a life according to a man who came to this earth and taught us how to love each other and respect each other. It's fairly simple, you know, but it takes faith.
It does.
That's what it is. It's just faith. You believe in something that you can logically explain doesn't exist.
Well, I don't often quote Ronald Reagan, but he said it's simple. It's not easy, but it's simple.
Mm-hmm.
And that part is simple, but not easy.
Right.
Well, any final remarks you'd like to make for us?
No, I think I've worn your ears out for now.
No, this is fascinating to me. Well, thank you very much.
Well, thank you.